If we're to have a genuine peace, this cannot recur. We must have a peace in which territories adjacent to Israel are not used as launching grounds for rockets and missiles against the Jewish state.
Can I first of all join you in condemning unreservedly the rocket attacks from Gaza onto your country? These are indiscriminate attacks aimed at population centres, and that tells you everything about the despicable and wicked people carrying out these acts. We condemn them utterly. I've also underlined to Prime Minister Netanyahu what we oppose, and that is opposing, and will continue to oppose, boycotts of Israel. Young Israelis will not be persuaded to support peace by seeing their own dreams for a successful future taken away from them.
Israel said Palestinian militants fired some 60 rockets towards the south of the country on Wednesday. It was the heaviest such barrage since 2012. Israel retaliated with airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had warned of a forceful response.
At this moment, the Israeli army is responding with force to the firing upon Israeli citizens by the Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip. If there won't be quiet in the south, there will be noise in Gaza, and that's an understatement. I call on residents of the south to act according to instructions. The Israeli military will get the job done.
Islamic Jihad said on Wednesday it had fired 90 rockets towards Israel. It said the barrage was an operation called Breaking the Silence.
To other news now, and fresh pictures have emerged of the Israeli bombardment of Gaza late on Wednesday. The Israeli military says it bombed 29 targets in the Gaza Strip. It reported 60 rockets fired into southern Israel, the highest number since 2012. Other sources say more than 100 were fired. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad group says it fired them in response to the killing of 3 of its members on Tuesday. The Israeli foreign minister is calling for a full occupation of Gaza. Well, let's get the very latest from Kimberly Halkett. She's live for us in Jerusalem. Kimberly, what's happened overnight?
Well, I can tell you that you're right. This has come as a response to a series of incidents. So there was some tension that has been building over the last few days. As you point out, 3 Palestinians, or rather 2 Palestinian men, 1 Jordanian man of Palestinian descent, were killed by the Israeli military earlier in the week. Conflicting reports about what happened there. In at least one of the cases, eyewitnesses say that the men were provoked, and it was then that the Israeli military killed one of these gentlemen, who happened to be a Jordanian judge. This prompted an apology by Benjamin Netanyahu, something that was very unusual because this rarely happens in these cases, we are told. But the hope was that this would in some way prevent an escalation of violence. Of course, that's not what we have seen, because we did, of course, see those 60 rockets being fired. Israeli military says, in fact, they found the remains of 60 rockets. And, of course, then the response from that, those rockets being fired into southern Israel, and then the Israeli warplanes hitting those 29 Palestinian targets. As you point out, this is a major escalation, one that has not been seen since 2012, and it prompted this very strong response from Benjamin Netanyahu.
At this moment, the Israeli army is responding with force to the firing on Israeli citizens by the Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip. If there won't be quiet in the south, there will be noise in Gaza. And that is an understatement. I call on residents of the south to act according to instructions. The Israeli military will get the job done.
Now, I can tell you that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has issued a statement regarding this, saying that, in fact, he has condemned these attacks. He's now calling on all actors in the statement, or all sides, to exercise restraint in an effort to try and not further destabilize the region. As we've pointed out, this is one of the heaviest barrages since 2012. Whether or not, though, this will mean an end to this sort of escalation violence is still not clear. Our sources tell us inside Gaza that, in fact, this really will depend on the level of casualties, and that number is still not clear.
Thank you very much for that, Kimberly. That's Kimberly Halkett joining us from Jerusalem. Well, US activist Joe Catron says the atmosphere in Gaza is extremely tense.
This has been the most significant exchange of fire by either side, I believe, since the ceasefire in November of 2011. And at this point, everyone is waiting to see what will happen next. Their statements mentioned a number, referred generally to Israeli crimes both here and in the West Bank. It also specified, of course, that the most recent of these was an Israeli incursion yesterday into the Gaza Strip, in which 3 of its fighters were killed. They've been very low since the end of the 2012 exchange. In fact, there were months afterwards without a single rocket being fired from Gaza. And during this period, Israeli violations of the ceasefire agreement, its gunfire into the access-restricted area by the separation barrier, attacks on fishermen at sea, these continued with hardly a pause. I don't think there was even one day where we did not see this kind of aggression from the other side.
It's coming from the news desk.